Morning everyone, I hope we're well and our families are doing well at this point. So let's move on to our Thursday's learning for today. So starting with reading again, and as I said before, we've been looking at 3 skills this week, and we're going to just combine those skills today and tomorrow and just have a practice and recap of those 3 skills. So just remind ourselves, we're looking at retrieval, inference and vocabulary questions. And again, carrying on with our Lemony Stickit book, chapter 4 we're going to concentrate on for today. So let's look at retrieval. So again, remember, retrieval is just to find the piece of information in the text and bring it back. So question then could be, what was Violet's main job during their cooking? So what I did for this one is, again, use my skimming and scanning skills and just found Violet's name to begin with as a starting point. And I then read around those 2 names, and I can see the top one doesn't really help me, but the second one, if you look, it actually says she roasted garlic and washed and chopped the anchovies. So in terms of my answer, that would be my answer. So full sentence answer, Violet's main job was roasting garlic and washing and chopping anchovies. So not a lot to change. You can nearly write what the author wrote for the answer of retrieval questions sometimes. Moving on to inference. So again, we're going to need maybe a bit more detail on this, and remember, really important that you've read the text and understand the text to answer inference questions. They are trickier. So let's have a look at the first question. So why do you think Count Olaf's face grew very red? So first thing to do again is to try and find where that actually happens. And we can see that there may be 3 things in here, so we need to be really careful, and we need to pick out the 3 things that may have caused his face to go very red. So obviously, before we even answer it and before we even look at the text, try and think of what might make his face go red. So he could be embarrassed, he could be angry. There are a couple of options. So let's just see if we can work out from the text if any of those are the case. So if we look at this one at the very beginning, it says, that's Klaus saying, you know perfectly well we haven't got any money. So before that, if you look back in your text, the Count was suggesting that he used some of their money to do up the house. So that's Klaus's reply to that. It then says his voice began to get a little louder. So again, I'm thinking, well, if his voice is getting a little bit louder, that implies that he's starting to get angry. And then if we look down here, it says he reached down and struck Klaus across the face. So that really confirms then that he was cross. So that's what would be my answer to why his face grew very red. So let's just see how I would actually answer that. So this would be my answer. I think Count Olaf's face grew very red because he was getting angry. He was getting angry because Klaus said they didn't have any money and his voice grew louder. In addition, you can tell he was really angry because he hit Klaus across the face. So again, I'm just clarifying all the information taken from the text and making sure that making sure I've not left anything out of that particular question. Okay, and then the final skill that we're going to be focusing on today is vocabulary. So let's have a look at a question. So very simply, it could be just to define a word. So again, find that word. So what does vendor mean? So find that word vendor in the text, and again, read around the text, read before it and read after it, that word. And we can see that it says they purchased olives after tasting several varieties and choosing their favourites. Now, if they've purchased something from a street vendor, it is likely, isn't it, that vendor means a seller. So my answer would be vendor must mean seller because the children bought food items from them. So that would be my answer for that. Okay, and on to maths. So again, we're carrying on with looking at decimals with different number of looking at decimals with different number of decimal places, and again we're going to be subtracting. And if you remember from the previous lessons where I've been putting the 0 in the place, that's going to be really important today. So you can see why that was important when I was suggesting that in yesterday's lesson. So just to recap, what does decimals with different number of decimal places mean? Well, you can see we've got 6.8, which has 1 decimal place. It's got 8/10 after the decimal point, and then we've got 9.79, which has 7/10 and 9/100. So it's got 2 decimal places. Okay, you can see there's a difference there. So how would we begin to solve 9.3 take away 4.78? So again, it's really important that we line those decimal points up. So we write our number out, 4.78, and that helps us to get that, make sure we've got that overlap in the right place. And let's have a go then at solving this one. So you can see now why that 0 that I added in yesterday's lesson might come in handy. So because if you look, we need to take 8 from something, and we haven't actually got any digit there to do anything with. So we need to put that 0 in place. Now it does mean that we're going to have to borrow, obviously, because we can't take 8 from 0, but that's okay. So let's borrow from the column to the left. So we're going to borrow from that 3, make that 2, put our 1 over, so we're doing 10 take away 8, that's 2, then 2 take away 7, obviously we can't do that either, so we're going to have to borrow from the unit column, the 9, just make that 8, so we've got 12 now, take away 7, which is 5, and then 8 take away 4 is 4. So our answer would be 4.52. Okay, if you pause the video and have a go at this one on your own. Okay, so this one is less important to have that 0 in, you can see, because we're not actually going to be taking away from that number now. That's the number that we're going to take away. So it's less important to have that 0 in, but again, as I said before, so that you don't get confused on any of the others, really important that you put them in. So let's do this one then. 5 take away 0 is 5. 3 take away 7 we're not going to be able to do, so we're going to have to borrow from that 7 in the units column there. So that's going to become 6, and then we're going to have 13 take away 7, which will be 6, and then 6 take away 4 is fine, that's going to be 2, and then again we could put that 0 in there. 1 take away 0 would be 1, so our answer would be 12.65. And again, keep looking out for those times table rock stars, battles, and just keep practicing. Remember, little and often is the way forward on those. On to English now, and we're going to begin to start writing our diary entries. So we're going to have a look at planning our diary entries today, and while you're doing that, I'm going to show you how you might begin to start to write a diary entry in the character's role. So it's really important when we're writing a role that we understand what the character is like. So just really quickly from the text that you've been reading, this is the sort of idea that we get of Justice Struass so far. She's kind, she's caring and generous. So when we're writing our diary entries and we're writing in role, we hope that that will come across to our reader. So we're trying to try and include that. Okay, so let's see how I've started my diary entry off. So, dear diary, Up bright and early this morning, I went to check up on those poor little orphans, and I couldn't resist the urge to help them. Losing their parents in that way must have been so terrible for them. And to think they are staying with such an abominable human being as Count Olaf brings a tear to my eye. Almost unbelievably, they told me that awful man was making them cook a whole dinner for an entire troop. I nearly fell over with shock. It's him who should be doing the cooking, if you ask me. Later that day, I escorted the orphans down to the local market to collect their ingredients before heading back to that rat-infested house. Instead of sending them back straight away, I just had to show them my library, and they seemed so grateful and sweet. Before long, I had to say my goodbyes and send them back across the road to Count Olaf. So, I hope that you can hear in there that her generosity and her kindness is coming through, and she also has an opinion on Count Olaf. She says he's an awful human being, and the fact that what we've tried to do in my text is try and make her seem that she feels sorry for the children, because again that shows a kind of caring attitude for Justice Struass. And again, you can see that she lets them look at the library just before they go home. So that gives us the idea that, again, that she's generous and she's there to help the children. So when you're writing in role, we want to try and create that character. If you are going to write in role as Count Olaf, obviously what you write should be very different, and the atmosphere that you're going to create should be a lot different. So give that a go, guys, and see how you get on. Remember, use the scaffolding plans in the packs to help you paragraph your work easily.